I'm going to talk a little bit about doing a drawing from photo reference. Sometimes we have a photograph that we really like the subject, and we want to do it as a drawing, but there are some things we need to know about that in order to choose the best of that photograph, or that part of the photograph that is actually can be rendered in a drawing. First of all, a photograph is already not exactly representative of nature because it has been put into a two-dimensional form, and we see things three-dimensionally. For instance, if I were to take a picture of this pencil, we might not see its roundness. It would be reduced to a two-dimensional form, and we might not see all the information that tells us that this pencil is round. So keeping that in mind, we can make the best use of the photograph. I have a photograph here that I really liked of a chef that I know, and I wanted to do a painting from it. It has so many wonderful things going on. The chef here, and then this chef beside him. I love that it's a man and a woman together working. And then the assembly line here, which shows how they plate up food in a restaurant. And I loved, and then the background here, I thought this was really interesting. This is a world map here in this kitchen. That's very interesting. However, that's a lot to put in a painting, a lot of detail, a lot of things going on. And in the end, I decided for my painting that I was going to select, or crop in, as we say, select only a portion of it and just not render a number of elements in this picture as wonderful as they were. So what I ended up with was just the chef in the foreground working. I took out the whole assembly line. I took out the person standing next to him. I even reduced the background to just the sort of atmospheric colors and a hint of lamps there. I also, in the picture, he hadn't yet put anything of that green pea puree, which is what it is, on his plate, and there was an odd shadow there. So I reproduced what was on this plate to show what he was doing on his plate. And I also went through a process of what I thought this picture would be about. And I decided it was, I named it Chef Working, because I love the intensity of his face. Also, obviously the carefulness that he was employing to get all this put down. I loved the image of this shiny pot and his hands and the whole thing as a working image. And so I went from this photograph, which is not a great photograph and all that detail, to a simplified image, and I was very pleased with it. So that's the first thing to think about when using photographs as reference. Now it can be rendered, of course, anyway. It can be rendered freehand. It can be rendered not as representatively as I did. I pretty closely followed a lot of the details. It could have been very impressionistic with not all those details. And again, there's a number of ways to go about that. One way that has been in place for a long time, I don't think people realize this, is the grid system. And here we have Durr. He did this of himself. He created this grid system. So he's looking through the grid and reproducing what he sees in each of those squares on his page of the woman that is posing there. That is a system that is used today more often than many people realize. As a matter of fact, I found this online. You can buy a stand like Durer had, if you want to look at a still life or a figure through that grid and use that as a system of figuring out the contours and the elements in the drawing. If we're doing it from a picture, we can block it off right on the picture. So here I have, this is the image, I made a copy of it, and I blocked it off in 2-inch squares. So this whole thing is 6 by 6 inches. And then I blocked off on my drawing pad a 6 by 6 area with 2-inch squares. So I'm rendering this exactly the same size, which is one way to go. It just works out that that would be an okay size to work with. And then what I would do, and then I numbered across the top the squares and then lettered them. And this, by the way, this does not take higher math, or I would not be able to do it because I am not good in math. As you can see, I had to do this twice. It takes a little bit of arithmetic and a little bit of thinking, but it is possible for anybody, even with a math deficiency such as I have, to do this. So once I've gridded this off, then what I would do is replicate what I see in each square. And this breaks down the contour difficulty. Instead of having to figure out the proportions of this whole image, I can go to square number 2B, for instance, which would be, whoops, I want to number these and letter them, A, B, C. I would go to 2B, which would be that square, and I blocked off just the image that I wanted. I didn't block off the whole thing. And so this is the square that I would need to, it's a lot easier to figure out the contour of just that one square than it would be to figure out, I mean, it's possible, but this breaks it down. Like a lot of problems in life, it breaks it down to a manageable image here. And I would go through and in each square reproduce the shapes that I see within that square. And of course I would have to go back and do some adjustment. One thing that's important is to do this grid very, very lightly, because in the end, when I have it all perfect, I would take an eraser and get rid of those lines. And then all I would have would be the contour of the drawing, and then I could go on and finish. I could keep it as just a contour drawing, or I could go in and put some tone or some color or whatever in it. Now if you wanted to do it upsize or smaller, then a little more math would be required. For instance, if I didn't want to do it that small, I could do it in a larger size. I'm going to do this like this. And then I would want to make the squares a little bit smaller. So I reduce these to 1 inch. Now it is good, especially if you're math challenged like I am, to stick to round numbers, so to speak. To enlarge things by inch or by ½ inch, not increase them, say, 5/16 of an inch. That could get rather complicated. But because this is, if I enlarge this, these squares would be quite large, so I did 1 inch increments, and then I upsized this to, I don't know where my ruler is. Grab another one. So these are 2 inches, but I still have the same corresponding. I have 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have the same number of squares, and the squares correspond. So if I do my numbering here again, then, for instance, this shoulder that I worked on in the other image would be square number 3C. So I would go to 3C and reproduce that shape as I see it. And it takes in a little less than the other one. So that is one way to approach working off of a photographic image.